Hello there, friends and neighbors. This is me, Stella Hendricks. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Today we have episode 2 of Stella's book club. We are going to be reading chapter 1, really, of The Girl in the Centerfold by Surrey Marsh. But before we jump in, I feel like I should explain why I'm so dressed up today. In the last Playboy review that I did, November 2005, the first one, I'm pretty sure, with the girls next door on the cover. I'm just crazy about the girls next door. There was a picture of Holly that I happened across, and I got terribly excited. Here it is. This is from, they were going to some old Hollywood benefit. Can you see her there? There's Holly, and she's wearing a white flapper dress with a little beaded top and a white headband and a string of pearls just like this tied. And I was like, oh my gosh, by complete coincidence, I happened to have like that identical fucking outfit in my closet. And so I had to go and get it and put it on. And I told my girlfriend what I was doing, and she was like, oh, so are you cosplaying Holly? I didn't think of it that way, but I guess, yes, I am cosplaying Holly. Holly Madison, what do you think of my cosplay? Do you approve? I made this dress, by the way. I'm terribly proud of myself. I made this dress. I hand beaded all of these little beads right on there, all my little pearls and jewels, as I was sitting poolside at the Venetian, actually. It was a very posh moment, and Mariah Carey came on the radio singing that Sweet, Sweet Fantasy Baby song. It was a legitimate moment of paradise. So that's why I'm all dressed up like a flapper. You can't really hear the background music, but it's Gatsby-esque to go with the theme. Although the book is not about Gatsby, it is about our lovely Miss Marsh. So again, of course, I'm not going to read all of it because I don't think you're allowed to do that. I'm going to read the highlights as they stood out to me, and then I'm going to kind of discuss it a little bit. Kind of Cliff's Notes style. Stella Notes style. Oh, I shouldn't have touched that. Leave it alone, leave it alone, leave it alone. The deluxe January 1967 $1.25 special anniversary issue of Playboy, in which I appeared, contained, as all January issues do, a feature called Playmate Review. This is a reprise of all the girls who were playmates the previous year. Among the photographs was that of a lovely girl with a voluptuous figure. I don't want to embarrass her, so I'll call her Quaker Mary. Yes, Quaker Mary indeed. Okay, I don't know why she comes up with that name, Quaker Mary, but I thought at first she would be talking about Janet Pilgrim, because you know, Pilgrim, Quaker, but it's not Janet Pilgrim because Janet Pilgrim is not one of the girls in the Playmate Review that year. It was December of 1966 that I met Quaker Mary. I had flown into Chicago to participate in a Playboy promotion, which I'll describe later. In the late afternoon, I went to the Playboy offices on East Ohio Street to be briefed by Playboy executives on my promotional chores. Doing the briefing was Anson Mount, who has the title of Public Affairs Manager. Into the office flounced Quaker Mary, carrying her luggage. I had several impressions of her. For one, she and Mount seemed to be old friends. He greeted her enthusiastically. I believe he kissed her. For another, she was, to use a kind word, rather theatrical, lamenting about what must have been the worst plane flight since Snoopy shot down the Red Baron. When she was introduced to me, she said, "Hi there, honey," in such a way that I just knew she wasn't going to buy my matches. I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? Not going to buy my matches? Is that a little Match Girl reference? I have no idea. My strongest impression was either that the Playboy photographer had wrought a miracle, or Quaker Mary had changed considerably. She was tall and thoroughly bosomy, but she obviously had misplaced her calorie counter. Since the photograph was taken, she had put on a significant amount of flab. Thanks, Surrey. After a couple of cocktails and a lot of spirited conversation by and about Mary and her activities, Mount announced that we girls had better get dressed for the party. The party was the annual Christmas party to be held at Hefner's mansion. Since I was already dressed for the party, the only other girl was Quaker Mary. Gabbing all the while, I just don't know what to wear, she decided on a gold mini dress and disappeared into Mount's executive washroom to change. There was a moment of silence. I hadn't said anything for quite some time and was hardly filled with witty repartee at the moment. Mount called out, "Hey Mary, come on out, we want to see you." Suddenly the washroom door opened. There was Quaker Mary, attired in a straining girdle which was clearly inadequate to contain the roll of fat which hung over the top. To protect the rest of her modesty, she clutched paper tissues to her breasts. It had to be a novel use for Kleenex. I have trouble remembering the next events. I was present in the executive office of the public affairs managers of Playboy. I seem to possess all my faculties, but I have only partial recollections of what happened. I think I was in shock. I'm sure I had my eyes closed part of the time. I'm positive I blushed, something I don't often do. "Hey, baby, you sure are something. Would you look at that? Turn sideways, honey. See that? See the size of her boobies compared to her waist? You ever see anything like that? Turn on around, honey. See how the waist curves into the hips." I didn't at first see what Mary was doing. I only heard a voice expounding on the anatomical joys of female watching, and all I saw was that the carpet needed sweeping. And yet I had to look. I don't know what Mary felt. She looked proud. I guess she had a lot to be proud of. "Come on, baby, don't be modest. Let's see ya." Mary hesitated. Maybe she giggled. Maybe I should wear the silver dress." She bent over and fished the dress from her luggage, and in the process the Kleenex fell away, and she bolted into the John. I begin this book with that episode, for it marked the beginning of the end of my Playboy adventure. I had been a bunny, nearly all of me exposed to club members. I had posed as a playmate, all of me exposed to the world. I had been nude for so long with photographers that I began to wonder if I might develop calluses. That's hysterical. I had various reactions to my experiences, but sitting there while Quaker Mary put on her little striptease, doing an extremely private thing for the enlightenment of the public affairs manager of Playboy magazine, I felt for the first time dirty. I said to myself, "Surrey, what the hell are you doing here?" I just kept wishing she'd hurry up and get out of the John. I had the strongest impulse to wash my hands. I don't know Mary very well. I certainly don't know how she happened to become a playmate. Yet I doubt if she is an exception to this statement. Playmates are not born, they are made. Isn't that such an interesting sentence? Because that's almost exactly like what Holly Madison said when the producers asked her when she realized she was beautiful, and she said, "I never realized I was beautiful, I made myself beautiful." By the way, that is a statement that I deeply identify with. I was never beautiful as a high schooler. I was not attractive. I never got asked out. No one showed the least amount of interest in me until I decided to look at myself and figure out what was beautiful and what I could enhance. I made myself beautiful. I was not born beautiful. I never realized I was beautiful. I made myself beautiful. Anyway. I've heard that hundreds, perhaps thousands of girls write to Playboy every year, appropriate photographs enclosed, seeking acceptance as playmates. But they have to be girls who talked themselves into posing nude, or who were talked into it by assorted husbands, boyfriends, fathers, girlfriends, and mothers, or who are sick with a streak of exhibitionism. Okay, well, I can't talk about that too much right now because I have the notes. I'm going to talk about it afterwards, but I have a lot to say about that. I simply believe that a woman, like a man, has a habit of wearing attire. A significant industry has been developed around that fact. Girlfriend, you're from Norway, where people have to wear clothing or they die of freezing. That's all I have to say about that. So I'd like to tell how I became a playmate. I've always felt that the best capsule description of me is my real name. Translated from the Norwegian, Solveig means sunny. I've always been sunny. I even look sunny. I have blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. And like sunshine in Norway, there isn't much of me. I'm 5'2", 98 pounds. My disposition is sunny too. Debatable. I'm not very complicated and seldom unhappy. I adjust quickly to whatever circumstance I'm in, and I like to please. There isn't much to tell about my life in Norway. I was born on November 11th, 1947 in Store Elvdal. It is a picture-perfect postcard place with lush pine forests, rugged hills, and the purest air in the world. In summer, there are green meadows and wildflowers and cool lakes to swim in. In winter, which is most of the time, there is snow. So much snow. Dear me. Sometimes it was so deep that I couldn't see out my bedroom window out of our 4-room farmhouse. Store Elfdal is layers and layers of clothing and warm fires that make your fingers and toes tingle after you've been outside, and skiing. I learned to ski almost before I learned to walk. It's like me with horses. I learned to ride horses about as soon as I learned to walk. I guess my attitude toward my mother and father is best revealed if I admit I lied to Playboy. In that super special issue of Playboy, I was captioned as the unmelancholy Dane, supposedly born on a farm near Aalborg, Denmark. I've hardly set foot in Denmark. I lied about my native land as well as changed my name in hopes that my parents would never learn that I had posed nude. I figured that my father, after all, hardly had a lifetime subscription to Playboy, and my mother did not move in social circles likely to have the walls plastered with pinups. But I failed to appreciate the international appeal of skin. My brother is a school teacher in Oslo. One day, one of his students went up to him, spread open the deluxe issue of Playboy, and said, "Isn't that your sister?" He went into a state of shock, fled the classroom, and rushed to my mother. Do you know what Solveig has done? When I returned to Oslo some time later, my mother asked me why I had posed nude. I tried to explain, much as I am here, I guess. It wasn't a very satisfactory answer to my mother, and she cried. And then I cried. In the jargon of today, my teenage years in Norway were a grossly familiar case of alienation. I didn't seem to belong to my family. It was as if I were a foster child or adopted. My parents, even my brother and sister, were so much older than I. The gap between generations seemed widened into a chasm. I had the strongest feeling that I was in the wrong family. I didn't even look like them. They were dark and I was the blondest of blondes. They were average height and I was tiny. They were plain and I felt pretty. They were somber and I always enjoyed laughter and fun. They were defeated and I just knew I could conquer the world. They were scared and careful. I sought adventure and knew no fear. I just didn't fit. Today, older and at least a little wiser, I honor my parents, love and respect them, but I cannot escape the notion that somehow God or nature has made a terrible mistake. Girlfriend, I think a lot of us feel like that. The second statement to be made about my teenage years in Norway can be reduced to a single word: America. My fascination with America began when I was 12 and started to go to American movies, read American magazines, and listen to American music. I had an insatiable curiosity about America. I had an unshakable conviction that I was going to be a famous American movie star, actress, model, singer, something. By the time I was 16, I knew with certainty that I was going to America to be famous. The start of my coming to America was an advertisement by a Swedish employment agency in an Oslo newspaper. It seems there was a need for domestics to work in the United States. I answered the ad. At the same time, I casually mentioned to my mother that I thought I'd like to take a vacation, maybe travel a bit. I certainly said nothing about America. Ordinarily, my mother would have said, "Where do you want to go and who are you going with?" This time, her mind must have been on other things. She just said, "Yes, dear." When the application form came from the Swedish agency, my hopes were floored. Since I was under 18, I had to get my parents' permission to go to America. I could visualize her reaction if I said, "Hey Mom, I'm going to go to America to be a domestic servant, just sign here." And so I covered up most of the application, treated the matter as one of no utter importance, and yawned as I said, "I need your signature on this application." "What application, dear?" "It's nothing, just a job application. I probably won't get it." She hesitated. I was sure she would ask what job. Instead, she signed. 2 weeks later, I was notified that I had been employed by a rich American family in the suburbs of New York. New York! Oh, how I dreamed of living in New York. As I started to leave the house to go to the travel agency, my mother said, "Where are you going, Solveig?" "To the travel agency to pick up my ticket." "Are you going on a trip?" "Why, yes. Don't you remember? You said I could." "Oh, I know, but I didn't think you meant it." "Oh, I meant it, and now I'm going to go." "Where, Solveig, where?" "America, Mother." So very interesting. Obviously, a lot of that has not aged very well. I don't care what year it is written in. I do not care for body shaming, and it makes it really difficult for me to like Solveig when I read her really scathing things of how she treats the other girls sometimes. I know that was more a product of the time, but still, it always just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I think that also might have a lot of the reason subconsciously behind why she didn't want to pose nude is because she is afraid of receiving the treatment that she is dishing out. Although I think I'm actually diving into my notes. I had to write down notes because I go on terrible tangents. So, the really harsh criticisms of Quaker Mary. Even the name sounds mocking, doesn't it? Quaker Mary. She didn't just say, Jane Hansen. She came up with like some kind of a mean sounding name to me. Opinion. She's afraid of receiving the treatment that she is dishing out. Also, Mary seemed to know Anson Mount. It seemed like they were old friends. And Solveig admits in there that she does not know Mary very well. So Mary choosing to do her little striptease for someone who seems to be her personal friend, and Solveig just ripping into her like that seemed so inappropriate and much more telling about Solveig than about Quaker Mary, who did nothing wrong. Or neither did Anson Mount. And the guys, what were they? This is another thing that we read in there what the guy said. "Oh, turn around. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at the boobies." I have been a stripper. I happen to know that there is a tone and a way for guys to talk like that and to be truly praising and admiration and just, a moment of true appreciation. It's lovely. And those same words, when intoned differently, can be very scathing and very dehumanizing. And we don't have a recording of how the guys were talking at the time. So it really could have gone either way. So if Mary was being humiliated and put on this show for these guys, that would be certainly one thing. But it doesn't really read that way to me exactly, especially because she seemed to know them. And Solveig in there, she says, Mary looked proud. Mary looked proud. Mary was happy with what she was doing and the attention and the feedback that she was receiving. And then Solveig says something possibly snotty about, I guess she had a lot to be proud of, which, again, I could be misinterpreting it. It's really, tone is very important and you don't get tone from books. Also, we have to remember Solveig is Norwegian, so there's going to be a little bit of a language barrier there and a little bit of a cultural barrier there. Something I've learned, certainly with Ukrainians, Russians, other Baltic, Scandinavians aren't exactly Baltic, but they kind of are, is they're very blunt, they're very upfront, they're very kind of serious. It's just a little bit different. There's a bit of a cultural difference there, and I think that's important to remember when reading this book, that there is going to be a little bit of cultural difference between her and us. Oh yeah, playmates are not born, they are made, reminds me of Holly Madison's quote. Yeah, I already talked about that. So right on. She talks about how women either have to be talked into it or have a sick streak of exhibitionism. I think that's really interesting that she doesn't think that any girl would just naturally want to be a sex symbol, that would want to be a nude model or might find something noble and beautiful in doing this. You have to be talked into it. I certainly don't agree with that. And I found her term, a sick streak of exhibitionism, very interesting. This book is written in 1969, and at the time, homosexuality was also considered to be something that you were sick with. It was considered a mental illness. I think it was taken out of that definition or whatever in 1973. So, yeah, maybe they were sick with exhibitionism. Maybe some girls are just sick and they want to be free and they want to be sexy and they want to celebrate their beauty and their sexuality. And if that's being sick, then I hope I never find the cure, motherfuckers. I should stop swearing so much on here. I'm gonna get in so much trouble. But honestly, that's not sickness. Maybe at the time I could see why she was struggling with it. Again, you have to remember the culture of the times, and she often in here kind of contradicts herself and says things that are really insightful and really funny, and then says something that I think is so stupid and so reductive, and I despise it. And then but I have to also remember, this girl is 19 or 20 years old when she writes this book. So the culture of the times, the youth of the writer, and there's just a lot that goes into it. It's super interesting though. Super, super interesting. Oh, also that reminded me, so that at the time that homosexuality was considered something you were sick with. I am bisexual, and I had a cousin of mine, you remember we're Mormon in my family, who is gay, and he was really struggling with it, and he had only kind of recently admitted it to himself, and he asked me sort of at one point, I guess he thought I'm one of the nicer cousins because I'm an apostate and all that, and he's still in the church and he's still struggling with his identity, I'm sorry to say. I really hope that he finds peace with himself. But he asked me, why not, if you like girls and guys, why don't you just go for the guys, and no one will know. It's not like being gay where you have to be fake with a woman to fake it and live your life as a lie. You can live your life truthfully as a bisexual and be with a man and just, no one will ever know. And I thought about that for a minute, and the scene from X-Men 2 popped into my head, where Nightcrawler is talking to Mystique, and he says to Mystique, "Oh, I heard that you can imitate other people, even their voices." And she does even their voices, in perfect imitation of him. And he says, "Well, why not stay in disguise all the time? Why not look like them all the time?" And her answer was, "Because we shouldn't have to." And even at the time when I heard her say that, I was still kind of in the closet to myself, and I thought there's something so right on about that. Because we shouldn't have to. And because we aren't sick, not with exhibitionism and not with homosexuality. I'm really glad that we live nowadays in America where we can really be our authentic selves. I love America. Okay. Oh, and this kind of goes with it, and being talked into and out of it. I don't think Solveig 100% knows what she feels or what she thinks. Also, for a long time in the church, I believed that homosexuality was wrong. Now, deep down inside of myself, I always kind of wondered why. Like, it didn't seem like such a bad thing to me. It kind of seemed fine to me, but I knew that the Lord said that this was wrong, and therefore I believed that this was wrong. But inside of me was always that conflict, and I could feel it. And I think that Solveig, in some ways, kind of feels that conflict. She kind of bothers me a little bit occasionally, though. She reminds me of a quote about Tsar Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, of Imperial Russia. It was said that Tsar Nicholas II was like a pillow bearing the impression of the last person who had lain their head upon it. I feel like, Solveig, babe, you're very easily talked into and out of things, and you seem highly concerned about the influence of other people and how they can talk people into and out of things. I think she needs to learn how to draw a hard line and say, this is what I believe and this is not what I believe. And, I think partly in writing this book, that's something she was trying to do. It's just, I hope she was happy in the end that she wrote this book, because, you know, she did Playboy and then she ended up not being happy about it. And I think that's just so sad. And I think she was really trying to figure herself out. And the book seems very sincere to me. So I hope that she was happy for having written it afterwards, and she didn't feel like she had just exposed her soul as well as her body, and now she regretted it. I don't know. I do not know. And the dream of America. Yeah, I think I already went on my little America rant. I love America. I think it's so great that we live in this country. We're so incredibly blessed that we can be ourselves, and that we can have scandalous publications like Playboy, that we can have these conversations with each other. I really think that having the conversations opens up a lot of different doorways, sharing ideas with each other, even ideas that you don't agree with. Who was it who said that it's the mark of an intelligent mind to be able to entertain an idea without accepting it? I love doing that. I love entertaining ideas. Maybe it was the mark of an educated mind. I can't remember the quote exactly, but I think that's a really important thing to remember, and it's a really good point. So that is it for this week's Stella's Book Club. Next week, we're actually going to skip the next chapter, because it's just about when she goes to New York and she's a nanny for this family for a little while, and she decides that she hates it. Because the kids are these totally spoiled, rich American brats, and they are like super picky about what they eat, and their mom expects Solveig to really like cater to them. Oh my, I would have been out of there too. I love kids. I would have been gonzo. I would not have put up with that. So we're gonna skip over that chapter and go on to the next one, where she gets a job, pardon me, as a bunny in the New York Club. So I'm super excited to dive into that one. Please let me know your perspectives, your thoughts, your ideas, your insights. I really, really would love to hear them, and would love to talk about it. And thank you so much for stopping by and watching my little videos again. I super appreciate it. Do remember to like and subscribe if you liked it and you want to subscribe. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Thanks very much, friends and neighbors.